I get to watch that, they told me if it went down to 495, they wanted it to go in. But I think yeah, it was like uncontrollable.
It's at 6 o'clock, Jen. Oh, is it? He says it's on. Okay. We're going to call the December 14th, 2021 Village Council meeting to order.
Allworder,
Here.
Frankel,
Here.
Sog,
Here.
Steinbrink,
Here.
Turner, Welsh,
Here.
Whitney.
Yes. Okay, before we get into anything, I want to say that we have Ben Chernacki here as our law director this evening. And we also have our prosecutor here, Mike Cicero. With that, we need a motion for the minutes of November 9th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Allworder,
Yes.
Frankel.
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner, Welsh,
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes. Thank you. Next is pay ordinance 1256 for $653,031.40.
Move to approve.
Second.
Allworder,
Janet, I had one question on the second page there.
Into the microphone, please.
Cuyahoga County Treasurer on the second page, the 162,000.
That was the wastewater from 2021, 2020 that we pay in 2021. So
Okay,
now we're done with the county with the wastewater plant.
okay, all right, thank you.
any other questions? Allworder,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner, Welsh,
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes. Thank you. Next is treasurer's report. Steve?
Good evening. This month's Treasury report discusses, first of all, the year-to-date financial results for the 11 months that are ending November 30th. And secondly, reports on the meetings held and the progress that we've achieved in respect of setting a 22 budget. And that work underlies the appropriation ordinance that you'll get later, which is 2021-50, dealing with expenditure approval. So as to the year-to-date financial performance, statements were distributed to the mayor, the clerk, and council in advance of the council meeting, as has been our procedures over the last number of months or years. The village is on very solid financial footing. November produced general fund revenue of $255,000. Of that, the village collected $191,000 of municipal income tax revenue and $64,000 of other income from other sources. In November, the village paid $405,000 for police, fire service, and administration. Payroll and related personnel costs accounted for 75% of this, or $306,000. No other expenditures were unusual. For the 11 months, the general fund revenue of $7.4 million exceeds our general fund expenses of $5 million by $2.4 million, resulting in a large surplus. Revenue from real estate taxes and municipal income taxes are favorable to budget. All expenses are on or near budget, with most variances attributable to the timing of the payments. The general fund cash balance at the end of November is $7.6 million, representing over 12 months of our operating costs. At this time, it's safe to forecast that the village will complete calendar 2021 with the current year 2021 operating surplus in excess of our planned surplus of $777,000 for the general fund. Again, the village is on solid footing, and the surplus in 21 will be available to use in 22 and future years. As to the capital improvement fund, the November 30th balance is $460,000. We expect to spend the majority of this fund in December to complete the 21 road program and other active projects that are coming to a completion. As mentioned every month, the books of the village are on a cash basis. That means there can be large variances based on when cash is received and when expenses are paid. It is not uncommon, month in, month out, and year out, to have a surplus in one period followed by a shortfall in the next period. As to the 2022 budget, we have completed the general fund budget for 2022. The village finance administrator and I have met with the department heads, with the insurance committee, and with the wage and benefit committee. Using that information, the budget and finance committee met twice in hours-long working sessions and approved a balanced budget consisting of 5.6 million in revenue and 5.7 million in expenses. The expenditure figure of $5,731,000 underlies the appropriation ordinance number 50 that will be discussed later on in this meeting. Also, the recommendation of the wage and benefit committees underlie the appropriation requests 46 and 48, which will also be discussed. With that, there are a few open items to continue working on. While we've set a general fund budget for 22, we know that the 21 data, once finalized by the turn of the calendar, will help inform us on the longer range implications. In the first quarter, therefore, we will revisit the financial projections developed in 2020 for the long range plan and update the long range numbers. We'll also look at the special purpose funds, evaluating the manner in which they are available to the village for restricted purposes. We'll also set up the protocol for evaluating qualified expenses from the conservation levy and applying those proceeds. And finally, we'll be evaluating the federal COVID recovery funds as to their use, as to their availability for qualified uses. I do appreciate the work of the administration and the department heads. Thank you all, gentlemen and women. That are the committee members, including some of the volunteers that are not council members, and of course, the council members that participated, the clerk and the mayor. This report will be posted on the village's website, and I'm happy to answer questions either now or as we work through the ordinances.
No questions? We'll move on. We can bring them up later. Next is mayor's report. I have a couple of things. Chief, I want to read a thank you note. Chief Minicello, I would like to acknowledge the compassion and kindness shown to my husband and me when Detective Michael Day and Officer Newsom made a 911 call to our home. My husband had fallen in the garage and was unable to get up. The officer demonstrated such care and were so positive and supported as they assisted him into the house. My husband passed away October 22nd, but I shall always remember the care and concern we received from Officer Day and Newsom. Sincerely, Jan Vanderfeen. It was just a nice note this past month. And then I have two thank yous to our fire chief and our police chief for going to Hawkins School and, or zooming into Hawkins School, sorry, for the kindergarten class. They can just hand those to them. Thank you. Next, I would like to thank Ann and Nancy and Larry for their service. And I want to give them each something from mayor and council.
That says Ann. Ann.
This is yours. You can open it or not. This is for Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice.
And then if each one of you wants to say something, now would be the time.
So I'll go first if I may. So I prepared a few remarks that Mayor Schneider, I'd like to thank you and the residents of Gates Mills for the opportunity to serve as a member of council over the past 9 years. This has been a most rewarding experience as I have had the opportunity to meet and speak with villagers and listen to their concerns and to dedicate my efforts to do my best to maintain and improve the interests of the village. A village is not run without dedicated village officials and a conscientious village staff. My thanks to Mayor Schneider and to all our council members that provide countless hours of time and energy, and often with little recognition or thanks. To the department heads, Chief Minicello, while chairing the safety committee, I've had the pleasure to work with you closely. I have great respect for your commitment to the village. You lead an effective team of well-trained professionals that continue to provide high caliber safety services to the village. You have a clear vision for our safety and dedication to the village. Thank you. To our fire chief, Tom Robinson is celebrating his 25th anniversary with Gates Mills. Congratulations. He continues to emphasize his training of our firefighters, spearheaded the design and purchase of our recently purchased fire engine, and keeps us up to date on fire prevention. And he's now considering offering cooking lessons to reduce the number of calls for smoke and burnt foods. So that's great. And Dave Biggert, our service director, we thank you for your continued efforts keeping our roads free of snow and ice, and for the beautification of the landscapes and our holiday lights that we're enjoying right now. And I think we can all agree it's the quality and efficiency of our service department that you lead. And to Janet, our finance administrator, thank you for your help answering my many questions throughout my years on council, and for your industrious work ethic. I often pass the village after normal business hours and see that your lights are on because you're still working on village business. I'd like to recognize you for your dedication to the village. And of course, thanks to Chris Courtney and our village engineer, our coordinators, Dorothy and Jean, and our entire Gates Mills staff. I'd like to take a minute to reflect on some of the changes that I've noticed over the past years. Village involvement needs to be improved. In our last election of 2,000 plus registered voters, only 766 people voted, which is less than 40%. We need to encourage more participants and participation of our residents. Business from the audience has changed. In past years, villagers would express their comments and concerns. This was done in a respectful manner. Democracy demands input and consideration of opinions. I would hope that this could be offered in a respectful way, and we can return to civility to our open forums. Observe that the November election has created a great deal of angst in the village. Debate over transparency, village finances, and the funding of Mayfield schools are issues that have been raised. I assure you that every council meeting and every committee meeting have been open and transparent. Council does not meet behind closed doors. I encourage people to come to council meetings or committee meetings and hear firsthand how business is conducted. Listen to our village treasurer when he states that we are on sound financial footing. And if you don't think he's correct or you don't believe it, sit down with him and find out why he feels the way he does. Come to our Mayfield School liaison meetings or tour the Mayfield schools and see firsthand what your tax dollars provide. We are so blessed to live in this village. It's a small village with a big history. Contentious elections like the last one can stain the fabric of our community. Don't let opinions tarnish our village. Get facts firsthand, become involved, and show that we can respect each other even when our opinions differ. Again, thank you. It's been a pleasure serving.
Thank you, Larry. Very nice, very nice. Well put. Ann or Nancy, do you want to say anything?
Go ahead, Ann.
I kind of already took advantage of an opportunity when I said I was stepping down. So I second what Larry said. It's been a pleasure and an honor to work with all of you on behalf of our village. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Nancy?
Well, after Larry put that together, I'm really awestruck by.
Put the microphone.
I'm awestruck by your level of detail and preparation, and very impressed. And I thank you for that, because I think you said a lot of things a lot of people are thinking. I think there's very good participation by villagers, whether or not they voted in the election. I think they made some assumptions that were wrong. But I want to thank, over all the years I've worked on village committees and been on council, I completely agree with Larry. It has been an absolute privilege, and I have enjoyed every minute of it. I think one of the highlights has been working with the staff and all of those gentlemen. I guess we need a non-gentleman over there sometimes besides Janet, who gets to sit with us. But at any rate, I've been head of most of the committees except for safety. And I have been thrilled working with all of our staff members. They not only go above and beyond Chris has come out and given advice to countless residents, including me, on making things so much better for us in the village. Tom, well, he gave me a lot of advice on riding motorcycles back when I was doing that. But he has been stellar in terms of making sure that our volunteer fire department is top notch and comparable to any paid fire department in the county. Dave Biggert, I got to tell you, you really have been amazing. I mean, you're always prepared for planning and zoning. You always have things organized. You're not always the most perfect at getting back to our residents because you're so busy like a one-arm paper hanger, you hardly have time. So I forgive that. But you have done an unbelievable job in the years that I've been head of planning and zoning and involved with the village before then. And Greg, you just keep everything together. It's just been unbelievable. Our police department, I'm sorry, rivals any in the county and has thoughtfully updated with those things necessary without just figuring out there's a new toy that we want to add to the budget. And Janet, you had really tough shoes to fill when it came to the loss of Joanne, who had been here forever. And I think it was a frustrating time because things were in her hip pocket and not where they needed to be, where you could find them. So you have not only been, as Larry said, here practically 24/7 half the years that you've been here, but you have really taken a personal interest in what goes on in the village. And I thank you for that. And you have educated a lot of us, even though many of us had served before you came. And Karen, there's not much I can say about you other than you are the best. So I'm so thrilled that you're going to continue on for 2 more years as mayor. And if there's anything I can do, you know where to call.
But we all hope you'll stay involved with the different things you're working on. Broadband is one of them, you two, and we hope to get something there going. Anyway, we thank you all. So next, we're going to move to committee reports. Oh. Clerk next. Got out of?
As everybody behind the tables knows, all elected officials every 4 years have to get the HB9 training, which is Ohio Public Records Act and open meetings laws. And Janet has not been anybody's designee in this 4-year period. So I would like to make a motion that Janet be our designee for the HB9 training for this current 4-year term.
So moved.
Second.
Alward,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner, Welsh, Whitney.
Yes.
Do you have any other motions you can lay some work off from us to pass on to somebody?
Well,
Thank you, Janet.
I would comment though, that if you haven't had the training or you aren't familiar enough with the sunshine law, that you take the training, whether or not
It's worth it.
Janet is the designee. It's an important law in Ohio and should be familiar with it to all the
It's worth it.
council members.
Okay, next is committee reports.
I'll start. I have a couple of things to comment on. First, I want to talk about the comprehensive plan. I know most everybody on council was there. Ed, I know you couldn't make it, and obviously, Steve, you weren't involved, but I thought Saturday was an excellent 3-hour meeting, and the new council members that are coming in, I was so glad that they could make it. 2 reflections as I think back. We got into an interesting discussion on comprehensive plan versus master plan. And some of the words that were presented really just focused on the words land use. And really, I think comprehensive plan is a better way to call this because it does both include land use, but as our consultant said, it gets into other things, quality of life, transportation and circulation, conservation, infrastructure. She rattled off a number of different things. So I think that's very important. I also, we were reflecting, we had another meeting a couple of days ago, Sandra and Karen and I, and we went back and looked at how our whole process to select the consultant, which interestingly, between old and new council, I think we had 5 council people, either old or some of the new, plus 1 additional person on the selection committee. And the actual objective when we set out for effectively for RFP was as follows: to balance the objectives of enhancing the appeal of the village and the value of the land and property throughout the village, while retaining, if not enhancing, the unique historic character and quality services of the village. So we were very cognizant right from the beginning that we have a very careful balancing act in working through this comprehensive plan. So I just wanted to reflect on that. As far as the committees, we are continuing. We got some further suggestions that we're going through. I did count up, I mentioned, I think at some point that we'd have over 75 residents involved in this process. Somebody made a comment that was just, we're reviewing 75 people to choose for the advisory committee. But in fact, the reality is we're going to have, actually, when I counted it up, it's already over 90. And I think when we're done, we'll have over 100 residents involved in either the advisory committee or the 3 subcommittees, or for exclusive or individual interviews with the consultants. And so it's going to be quite an effort, and the effort to talk to all these people, see what their interest is, how they might best fit in, and the work is just a tremendous amount of work, and we still have a few more meetings to try to finalize it. One specific point to me that came out in the Saturday's meeting when she laid out the timetable a little more specifically, the consultant did. We are going to have this subcommittee called Outside Perspectives. And part of the role of that committee will be to try to come up with outside perspectives and feed that into the advisory committee. And I talked to the consultant after as to when should that committee start to gear up versus when will the advisory committee start to gear up. And while we have to have some further conversation, it seems possible that we're going to kick off the Outside Perspectives Committee in January to begin to get some work that can then feed into the first advisory committee meeting that'll be in the April-May time period. So anyways, that was one comment on the comprehensive plan and the status. The second topic is the Chagrin Valley Dispatch Financial Task Force that I'm a member of. We had our second meeting a couple of weeks ago. As you may recall, we are working on possibly alternative ways of determining how to allocate cost across the communities. The committee is clearly focused on probably coming up with alternative ways, how that would then get voted, what the changes would be. As you might imagine, if the process changes, then some communities would see an increase in what they would have otherwise been charged, and other communities will see a decrease in what they would have otherwise been charged. And so, as you might imagine, there will be politics and how that all works its way out. Interesting that I had never understood nor focused on something that we all, everybody, all residents of the state of Ohio contribute to a 911 fund. How that money then comes back to the dispatch centers is the most convoluted thing I've heard. And none of it comes to Chagrin Valley Dispatch at this point. That is getting increasingly likely to change as Chagrin Valley Dispatch takes on more and more communities. And if and when that were to happen, that would be some additional money in, which would then reduce the amount that has to be allocated back out to the villages, the expenses or costs, net cost. And it could be that we change the allocation method at the same time that if and when we can get some 411 or 911 funds. So anyways, our target is to complete that work by May, and I think we'll be on track to do that. It's a really interesting committee, and I think we're going to have some interesting results.
That's it. Sandra?
I have a couple committee reports. One is the Land Conservancy.
Talk into the microphone.
They had their, the Land Conservancy had their board meeting this morning and welcomed two new members of the board who were selected by the board. Those were Anthony Fazio and Celeste McClung. So we welcomed them. There also was a resignation of a board member, Joe Joseph. He and his wife moved out of the village. He is a mayoral appointee. So Karen has been given the list of nominees recommended by the Land Conservancy from which she can select an additional appointee to the Land Conservancy. There was a discussion particularly about membership, which is down 77 compared to, I think it was 130 or so last year. So there is a strategy that we're going to apply now, hopefully through the end of the year, to reach out to those who have not yet renewed their membership and encourage them to renew. Some of that has to do with the fact that the renewal notices did not go out until just before the election. So late in October. So that certainly has impacted the response. And there'll be more to come about membership strategies in the new year. The other comment that I wanted to make had to do with the Mayfield schools. A resident sent me a link to an organization called Niche, who evaluates public schools across the country, one of many that do that. And they provided a 2022 report for schools. And I just wanted to comment that Mayfield fared pretty well in that report. Overall niche grade of A, and everything from academics, teachers, clubs and activities, diversity, college prep, health and safety were either A-, or A+. The only area that was a B+ was sports, which was a bit of a surprise because often you hear Mayfield associated with sports. Now, obviously, there are schools in the area that do better: Solon, Beechwood, Orange, and Chagrin Falls. But Mayfield, again, is our school district. It's doing well. It has great potential, and I think really speaks to the fact that there are opportunities, I think, for council and the village to get behind and work towards improvement. And I would say a goal for the next 2 years is to identify somebody who is willing to to run for the school board, and for us to get behind that person to really have a voice at the table as an alternative. And I'll send both of these to Janet so she can put it in the minutes as an alternative. U.S. News and World Report is always a well respected source of information about schools. Their rankings for all of them, including Solon, Chagrin Falls, Orange, Beechwood, West G, and Mayfield were lower, but still they were in that ranking. And finally, I thought this was interesting and important that among the 608 school districts in the state, number 7, where Mayfield is number 7 for 17 best place to teach, number 19 district with the best teachers in Ohio, and as I said, 33 overall best school district in Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Steve?
Anything new on the cemeteries?
No, there is not. Steve?
2 committees with which I've been involved this month. The Wage and Benefit Committee met as part of our budget process, was well attended. We evaluated all the current wages of all the different levels of the employees from full-time to part-time. We compared them to 8 other benchmarked cities and villages, both larger and smaller, all of them surrounding, essentially contiguous to Gates Mills. We found that in many cases, we were on average, except for our patrolmen and our sergeants, where we were distinctly below average and frankly, almost dead last. As a result, through conversation with the Benefit and Wage Committee, we increased those classifications. I think there are 9 officers in that group between patrolmen and sergeants, and to essentially become more competitive with the surrounding communities. We're not trying to play catch up or get to the highest level, but we need to be competitive. And the view of all the members present was that we had lost a little bit of our space there. In addition, other employees received across the board a flat 4% increase. We had a very good and healthy discussion about employment and about the shortage of qualified people, the attractiveness of other companies and sources, frankly, the number of people that just don't want to work anymore in a traditional way, and felt that in a combination of those environmental factors as well as the financial factors that we made the recommendations that we did. We looked at incentive and longevity and a few other items. They're all in the ordinance that you'll look at shortly. But I wanted you to know the process that the Wage and Benefit Committee went through to conclude on those numbers and those findings. The numbers that were finalized by the committee are in the ordinance. Right, Jack?
Thank you.
Okay. Finally, the Budget Committee met twice in the last month. I want to give particular thanks to those on council, those in the department heads, and those villagers who volunteer on that committee. The first session was 2.5 hours. The second session was 1.5 hours. That essentially is 4 to 5 hours of face time plus preparation time. We've got a nice balanced budget. We focus primarily on expenses and have tagged a number at essentially 4.9 million to run the village, plus capital expenditures of another $750,000. Tougher this year in some cases because the availability of vehicles, for example, is just not known. So while we have figures in the budget to purchase 3 vehicles this year, and 1 that was ordered last year that still hasn't been delivered, probably won't be delivered until the middle of 22. We need to continue to budget for that. We need to continue to essentially finance that, knowing that when those vehicles are eventually available, they may come in at different prices. So I think we're all going into that with open eyes. Thank you.
Steve, if I could just add one quick comment on that average wage increase of 4%, the budget or the Wage Committee approved. 2 weeks after that, the Wall Street Journal published that the national average for wage increase is 3.9% going into next year. So we actually ended up making, that's when our big decision was, is we knew that there's a big groundswell of, and to stay competitive, we felt we had to do that. And actually it got confirmed 2 weeks later, just to keep pace.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. You know, we were looking at CPI, which you could read about at 6% or over 6%. The sense of most of the members was that that rate of inflation and that CPI won't continue for another 12 months. And if it does, well, then we'll have another conversation. But that something less than that was right. We also didn't want to lock ourselves into such a large increase that we are then adding to that every year, essentially building a base that maybe wouldn't be necessary. So I think that number, Chip, thanks for that. And that confirmation is good to hear.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other committee? Okay, we'll move on then. Police report, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Good evening, everybody. Everybody should have received a copy of my monthly report. I will be happy to take any questions you may have. Just stuff. Yes, I was going to, thank you, Steve. Yes, I do. We did receive, the police department was very fortunate to have received from a resident another $25,000 to be used toward a future technology project. And so we are actually earmarking some of that money for dashboard cameras for the car. They need to be replaced. They're old, they're antiquated now. System's about 15 years old. So we're hoping to move forward with that in the first quarter of next year. So Yes, yes, that's correct. And in fact, Janet just reminded me, we did receive a stock donation from a resident, anonymous resident. I think it was, if I can say the amount, $10,000, I believe, from a longtime resident. And, we thanked him wholeheartedly for that as well. So thank you for the reminder there. Tuesday, November 16th, our police officers right here in this room, actually it was downstairs. All police officers participated in a self-defense class instructed by ODNR Supervisor Scott Denneman. He's been here before. He spoke a couple years ago for, we had a seminar here. Some of you may remember Scott. Scott's a certified instructor, so trained us in some basic self-defense, which was, it's been a while because of the whole COVID. We didn't try to get together that much, so we were able to get some training in, long overdue. And then the 29th of November, I thought I would mention Monday night, kind of unusual for us, but we did have 2 domestic violence calls within about an hour and a half of each other. So one of those calls resulted in the arrest of a 42-year-old resident on Brigham Road. And the other one, we were assisted by Hunting Valley because our officers are so tied up with that other call. So when one of the officers was able to break free, he went to the other end of town. That one took place off of Woodstock. So kind of a unusual Monday night for us. So I wanted to go ahead and comment on that.
Thank you.
Wanted to make a different,
Oh.
just a different comment, not on any of those topics, but in the Chagrin Valley Times around Thanksgiving, there was a really nice article. And again, I'll give it to Janet to put it in the minutes, but recognizing Arch Kimbrough, our school resource officer. And it's a picture of him pushing a little kindergartner on the playground. And the comment from the principal was, he's one of the most positive role models that we have at the school for the kids. Mrs. Ravita said, he's loved by every kid here. He plays with them. He works with them in the classroom. He's been invited to their graduations. And probably when they get old enough, they'll be inviting him to his wedding. I mean, what an asset for the school system, for the village, and the fact that part of his salary is paid by the school district. What a win-win, what a wonderful guy. We should all be so proud.
Yes, thank you for that. I mean, Arch does a great job over there. I think everybody knows that. He is, he does a lot over there. And like you just mentioned there, Sandra, I mean, he does the stuff on his own time. He doesn't have to go.
Yeah.
He's been to baptisms before. He's been to birthday parties, and if he gets invited, he will go.
Yep.
So, shout out to Arch. Does a great job over there.
Chief, just real quick, the town hall meeting that we had a week or 2 ago that has been posted on YouTube on the village website for those that weren't able to attend.
Yes, it has.
Okay.
Anything else? That'll conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and let me just also say, I've done this before, but I do want to thank Nancy, certainly Larry, working real close with Larry over the years, and Ann too, for your dedicated service at the village and, the support that you've given all the department heads. So thank you very much for your service.
Okay, next is Service Department, Dave.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. You should have received a copy of my monthly report. I'm happy to answer any question you may have.
Any word on when those polls are going to come?
No, not yet. I mean, they'll put the order in, but we haven't even been given a manufacturing date.
So those polls were inspected and they were bad.
Yes,
And so now this same company is remaking them?
they get one chance under ODOT's contract with them. They get one chance to correct the problem. ODOT will go out to the factory and inspect them to make sure that there's not the problems again. If they're okay, then ODOT will sign off and release the polls. If they're not, then they won't accept them, and then they'll go to another manufacturer, and that company will be removed from ODOT's pre-qualification list.
That leads me to believe it's an Ohio company?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Unusual, I thought.
Speaking of polls, Dave, I was at Wycliffe High School and they have the pole that right on the football field that
Oh,
Gilmore was talking about, if you want to go up and see
Okay.
it. So I was so surprised that it was right next to the bleachers, right next to the field. I
Interesting.
actually have a picture. I sent it to Karen.
Right.
Okay, we can do that.
Got the telephone antenna on top of it.
Okay.
Right. We're working with Gilmore at Planning and Zoning for the audience members that don't attend, to put a cell tower on their new lights on their football field. So they'd like, that area of the community has very poor, if any, cell service. So. Well, we've already authorized it in the past, but they didn't build it. They had some.
No, I
issues
understand.
Internally.
I
But
thought we
they're
were
coming
trying to-
back with a new plan. And I was surprised because we had been to John Carroll to see the poles there. Karen and I had gone over there, and I was at Wycliffe High School hiking in the Pete's Pond Park there, and there was a cell tower right on the football field. I was like, wow,
Pretty amazing, the technology.
it's amazing.
Great.
The village also looks very nice, Dave. The lights
Thank
are
you.
terrific.
Thank you. Yeah, the guys do enjoy doing that every year, so.
Thank you.
Karen, just a suggestion, maybe in your, well, of course, next pink sheet isn't going to be till February, but some communication about the polls, because those polls are lying there unless they're gone. And, I think people are expecting that to be completed. And I think this is a big
Oh,
big
down at
issue.
River Road in Mayfield.
Yeah, that why it's going to be delayed.
It's a good idea.
The traffic. pole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what happened? Because it's, you should be completed by now.
You could put something for the pink
Yeah.
sheet next month on your page with what the heck's going on with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
polls.
we can
Mhm.
do that.
Okay.
Okay,
That concludes my report.
thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Next is Fire Department, Tom. Congratulations on 25 years.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. This not only is my 25th year, but yesterday was my anniversary. I've been the fire chief for 16 years and one day. So a couple anniversaries this time of year. You should have received a copy of the fire department report. We had a fairly busy month. The call volume is up for both fire and EMS over 2020. Fairly typical of every fire department, probably every police department. We saw some reductions in 2020 with everything that went on with COVID, and we're bouncing back to a more normal run volume. There were some interesting calls in there. If you wanted me to elaborate on any of those, I know everybody's reading them right now. And I figure out
Well-
which one's the interesting one?
I
End
think
of
it's
life.
just
What is
interesting that you had 4 carbon monoxide calls.
Yeah.
That's
Yes, yeah.
unusual.
And that is actually the one about halfway down the page, 175.
Yeah,
We had a resident, and many of our residents have generators. And this particular generator was installed on the west side of the house, which we would never recommend because of our normal west, to east wind.
Oh, wow.
And the exhaust from the generator actually was going into the house.
oi,
Oh, my
So
gosh.
months and months ago, we went on that call and said, okay, get with your generator company, figure out what's going on. We recommended they reroute the exhaust around the side of the house. The company didn't do that, but the resident was pleased enough with our response when we first came there that they called back and said, we need you to come and check this. So after the repairs were made, we came back and there's still carbon monoxide in the house. So we kind of went through a whole process with them, said, okay, they need to reroute the exhaust. That was our recommendation and it's still our recommendation. So we did have incidents with carbon monoxide. Let's see, the other thing that I wanted to mention, Greg and I have talked about this. And Nancy is very much aware of this problem because she brought it to my attention first. And that is, if you might remember, at the end of October, there were changes made that said you need to now use the area code when you make phone calls. And sometimes they're going through without the area code, but as we move farther down and they make more changes, we're having an issue with older alarm systems in the village. Their programming didn't include the area code. So now if the alarm goes off, the dialer tries to make that phone call and it won't go through. So we worked with American Security, who has a lot of clients here in Gates Mills. They are in the process of contacting 100 residents who they think there's a problem, and they'll walk them through, trying to reprogram that. They'll send someone out if they have to do that. So we're giving American Security about a week to work through all of their customers that they've identified. And then Greg and I felt, we need to get this information out to people that use other than American Security to please test your alarm system, call the company first. I had a resident say, well, I'll just set it off and see if they call me. And I said, yeah, but they're going to call me too. So please contact your alarm company, express the fact that you're a little bit concerned about this change with the 10-digit, and they will walk you through doing a test to make sure that that alarm is actually going through. Other than thanking all the members of council and council members that are leaving for all of their support, all of the at least 16 years that I've been here as the chief, I wish you all a happy holiday. That concludes the fire department report.
Are you going to put about this alarm system in the pink sheet?
Yes, the problem we have is February.
Okay.
It's not coming out till February, so we are probably going to utilize the Your 911
Okay.
and the Connect, because we want
Okay.
this information out
Soon.
sooner than later.
You're going to have it on both though, because some
Yes.
people aren't on the 911 Connect. And
Yes.
I mean, I
And
did
a
experience
reminder
this
in February.
firsthand and did call Tom because I had a trouble report when I got back from vacation. And I called the alarm company. They had no idea. No idea. So I called the installers and they said, well, let's try this. And sure enough, it was just the phone number to get to the village department. And so I reprogrammed it. And it works fine now.
Tom, you may want to also put something in the pink sheet that in the area where someone has a generator, that they also have a carbon monoxide detector.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
But I'm sure you can.
Okay.
The people on YouTube, maybe not so much, but yes, we do that, and the follow-up report that is later on in the month. That's, we go back in, we test, we check for carbon monoxide. We have included in our smoke detector program, carbon monoxide detectors. So every time I go out to install smoke detectors, we're putting carbon monoxide detectors in homes too. So we're going to reach out. We just wanted to wait for American Security to contact these people so that when we push our information out, that whole group will have already been contacted. It won't be new to them. We don't want to flood town hall with phone calls.
So I was just thinking, if the carbon monoxide detector is in the basement which is far from where the generator is, would it be wise to have a carbon monoxide detector near the window or wherever where the generator is?
All right, I'm back on. This is going to be a little bit longer. We do not recommend, if you have multiple carbon monoxide detectors, it's fine to put one in the basement. But your carbon monoxide detector should be put near the sleeping areas of the home. Because if you're just using a single carbon monoxide detector in the basement and it goes off, and as you know, carbon monoxide makes you go to sleep, you may never hear the alarm coming from the basement. So we want to see those carbon monoxide detectors in an area near the sleeping, near the bedrooms. And as the fire department puts them in, that's where they go. And that's usually, I put that in probably once once a year in a pink sheet article about that, or contact the fire department if you have questions about placement of both smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors.
I can confirm that. My husband and I were going to bed one night. It was bedtime. So the carbon monoxide detector was going off and I said, oh, good Lord, just don't worry about it. And Russ is like, oh, I feel lightheaded and I'm like, no, you don't feel anything. So he says, I'm going to call the fire department anyway. So he did. They said we would not have woken up in the morning.
Oh, God.
So the Scottish Sicilian in me lost that bet and I'm still here. So
Is CEI scheduled to come back in here again? I mean, the whole problem is still them, and this is why we're using generators. And I know just my Epping Road property was out twice in one day. The response is better, but we're still going out.
We had outage this past weekend,
Yeah.
about 200 customers. You can
Yeah.
look online and,
No, I know, yeah.
and they send a thing out and then it seems to be an area off of Berkshire over there is a problem area.
And down at the
But we can
corner of
ask them
River Road,
again to
we
come
were,
out. I know they've been doing it because they send us, the chief and I, notifications of when they're going to have helicopters going over looking, and that's how they seem to look at the woods these days is look at their lines is through helicopters and drones. So I know they've been working on it, but we can
Well,
ask them back
There was a tree
again.
down on River, so that affected Epping Road. Because our
But the
electricity
response
comes
time
up
is a
from.
little better, but we're still getting outages and,
Yeah.
We're gonna
I
have-
experienced the
think
same
there's
thing
gonna
with the
ever be a
carbon-
cl-
yeah, just the
You're
portable.
not going to get it.
I experienced the same thing with our portable generators and thought I had it far enough away from the house and two of them went off and, almost killed my wife. So, you really have to be careful with those things.
Okay. Okay, next is ordinance number 2021-36. Larry?
This ordinance is an ordinance enacting Gates Mills Codified Ordinance, Chapter 318, Automated Speed and Traffic Enforcement Program, and this is going to be on second reading. And I believe Chip, okay with the right, so this going on second reading. Okay. So
Second reading?
second reading.
Okay, thank you.
That takes us to resolution number 2021-37, which is the resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Census Gatso Group for an automated photo traffic enforcement system. And this too is going on second reading, and I believe Chip has some comments to make.
Yeah, so I didn't, when the discussion came up in the October meeting, I wasn't there for personal reason. And then the first reading was in November of resolution 2021-37. I hadn't taken the time to really read the contract. Just for edification, I've had over 30 years of experience, actually, even before that, when I was CFO of a public company and subsequently many more. I've dealt with 100 contracts many times in contentious situations, particularly when you're in a restructuring or bankruptcy situation. So I have a pretty good eye for contracts, so I wanted to dig in on this one and just see what it was about. And quite frankly, there was something that I think we're going to work out, but I found a little bit disturbing. So as you might imagine, if you think about this, there is a natural conflict between Census Gatso and the village of Gates Mills. The village wants to reduce speed. Census Gatso wants to make a lot of money. And that may or may not meet in a compatible way. And I know there's been concern about what would happen if we really didn't like this after we've entered into the agreement. That was already being addressed. The first proposal was that we would have to pay a monthly rate for the remaining years in the contract up to the 5 years of the contract period. They've since reduced that to a maximum of 36 months. We can review that again when we read, and the third reading in the January meeting on that implication, but that would be a cost if we wanted to get out of it. But more importantly was the ability for us to set whatever level of violation. And we had a conversation with our assistant law director, because I said that, you know, if this thing, for some reason, we made headlines in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, we're the next Lindale or whatever, and we just really wanted to get out of it, we could cancel the contract at a pretty steep penalty, or we'll just raise the notification level to, the violation level to 100 miles an hour. And then we'll never, you know, you have to exceed 100 miles an hour to get ticketed. And obviously we'd never issue a ticket, hopefully. The agreement as presented to council and as of the latest draft 2 days ago is silent on that aspect until you get to paragraph umpty-ump that says, after signing this contract, both parties will put together a set of business rules that both parties will have to mutually agree to. So I don't like that. I don't feel you should ever have something open-ended. If we're going to sign the contract, I'd certainly want to know what the business rules are. So we have been able to get copies of the business rules from other communities, and we're in discussions with them. So we will iron out the business rules, how that meshes with the contract language. We'll work on that over the next month. But we will try to get some flexibility into the what is the speed range. Obviously not necessarily something we want to publish every day. How fast can you go without getting a ticket? But I think we can work this out, but it was kind of troubling. There was also an agreement that was referred to in the contract that said, and here's another agreement, and that was not attached. So just some of those things that I think we're buttoning down. We're not ready yet. We're going to have some more discussions, Greg and I, tomorrow with our assistant law director and probably with Gatso. And I think by the time we have council at the third reading, we should have at least something that I could represent from my own experience. That should be, I think, a reasonable contract, if in fact that's something we want to get into, which we will take up in the next council meeting.
Thank you. Chip, I had a question, question, the $38 for paid notice of violation.
Microphone.
The $38, is that consistent, or maybe the chief knows, with what other communities who have GATSO are paying? Are we competitive? Or the price they're giving us, is that competitive? I know you made some comparisons between
Yeah, that's the industry standard
GATSO
right now.
and Blue
That's-
Line, but
Yes, it is. Mayfield Village just entered into an agreement. That's exactly what they're paying.
the same amount.
Yes.
And others, because you mentioned several others.
Well, the one that I'm very
contract.
familiar with is, it's another vendor, Blue Line. They're at 40%. Different, they're out of Tennessee. There's a couple other ones out there, but they're right in that same range.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on. Next is resolution number 2021-42. Sandra?
A resolution authorizing the mayor to accept the anonymous donation of stock and to authorize and core advisors to liquidate the stock, directing the financial administrator to deposit the proceeds in the safety fund and expressing gratitude for the donation. So an anonymous donor has directed PNC Bank to make a gift of $10,000 of Chevron stock to the village for the benefit of the safety fund.
Second.
Do we need to declare an emergency? Or suspend the rules, for a resolution?
Sure, yes, please.
Second.
Allward,
Yes.
Frankel, Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh,
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes.
I move to approve resolution number 2021-42.
Second.
Allworder.
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes. Thank you. Next is Resolution 2021-43. Ann?
I would like to introduce Resolution 2021-43, a resolution accepting the rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. This is bookkeeping so that we can do our financials, and I move to suspend.
Second.
Allworder.
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes, and I move to adopt Resolution 2021-43.
Second.
Allworder,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes.
Next is Resolution 2021-44. Ann?
I'd like to introduce Resolution 2021-44, a resolution requesting the county auditor to advance taxes from the proceeds of tax levies pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 321.34. And this is so we can get funds to the village. So I move to suspend.
Second.
Allworder.
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes, and I move to adopt Resolution 2021-44.
Second.
Allworder,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes.
Next is Ordinance Number 2021-45. Ann?
Before Ann talks, can I just raise a procedural question?
Okay.
I looked at this and said, gee, isn't that coincidental that it's ordinance 2021-45 right after resolution 2021-44? And I didn't have the November package with me, but the minutes say that the last ordinance that we passed in November was 2021-41, I believe. And so I guess I'm wondering, where did 2021-42, 43, and 44 go? Shouldn't they-
42 is what Sandra
We just
just
did.
did.
No, those are resolutions. Those are resolutions,
They always go consecutive.
but doesn't the ordinance go consecutive from the last ordinance? Aren't resolutions
No,
separate?
if you go to the first one here, Chip, the first one is ordinance 36.
Sorry, I just learned something for the first time.
There
I
you
thought they
go.
were separate sequences. All right. Thank you. Sorry, Ann. Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't that far off. All right, sorry.
I'd like to,
Don't move there, Chip.
Yeah.
I'd like to introduce ordinance 2021-45, an ordinance authorizing a contract with Weichert Insurance Services, Inc. to furnish and provide liability and property insurance coverages for the village of Gates Mills, its officials and employees, and declaring an emergency. So we would like to have our insurance coverage stay active, and for that purpose, I move to suspend.
Second.
Allworder,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes, I move to adopt ordinance 2021-45.
Second.
Allworder,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes.
Okay, next is Ordinance 2021-46. Ann?
I'd like to introduce ordinance 2021-46, an ordinance declaring the village's intention to enter into a health reimbursement account for 2021 and declaring an emergency.
2022.
Oh, 2022.
Second.
Yeah, 22.
Allworder,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes, but did we suspend? We did not.
Yeah. we did. Did we? Oh, we did.
It should have been. Okay, I move to approve ordinance 2021-46.
Second.
Second.
Allworder,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes.
Okay, next is Ordinance 2021-47. Chip?
Yes. This is an ordinance setting forth the rate of compensation for engineering services for the village and declaring an emergency. I'll explain a couple of key points first, and then I think we want to suspend. Attached to this is a new consulting services agreement. Just to remind everybody, we undertook this summer to evaluate the village engineer function. Concluded that we were very happy with Chris. We certainly met with some other very qualified engineering organizations and felt that Chris was comparable, if not even better. So, but we did find a couple of things that kind of stood out. And so we've worked with Chris. You don't necessarily have to turn to it, but section 2-G, I would like to point out, this is new in the agreement. The rest of, there's a couple of things, otherwise it's the same kind of agreement we had in place in previous years with Chris. But this is annually, Chris will update the village engineer's assessment of roadway inventory and condition, and no later than May 1 of each year, recommend to the mayor, service director, and council a prioritized plan of roadway repairs and improvement projects for the current year and for the subsequent year. David, so at least we're looking at a 2-year picture. Then adjust the plan as approved by council, and then update the 10-year roadway capital improvement plan based on the updated assessment and the current year approved plan. Because we could be sitting here saying, gee, we don't really want to do that this year. Well, first of all, this is actually a significant change, because for a lot of years, it's been more, this is how much we think we can spend, and we turn to Chris to say, given that, what roads should we work on? What this is saying is, Chris, you come to us with what you think we ought to do, and then we will go wrestle with, can we afford it? And if we don't want to spend that much, then obviously, but we'll already have his a priority for the following year. So this is what would happen to the following year. So hopefully make it more of a struggle to see what, and he'll have prioritized. So I think it'll be a more vibrant process. And then when that's been worked out, then he will go back and update the whole 10-year plan, because obviously if things have changed in year 1, that rolls into year 2, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it should be a further improvement in our process. Now, that's not part of this agreement, but I think you're aware we are experimenting with an outside group that's doing their own assessment of our roads, not particularly expensive. They do it very efficiently, and we're going to factor that into the roads assessment. So when we start into this next spring, we'll have a fresh 10-year outlook and his priorities for 2022 and for 2023. So I think it'll be a big step up. The second thing, and this came out of our evaluating and talking to these other engineering firms, is there are really 2 ways for the village engineer to get paid for each project. In the past, it's been a straight percentage, it varies by the nature of it varied by the nature of the project. Chris had a whole table in the prior agreement, but for this type of project, he'd get X% of the total cost of the project as his fees, and for this type of project, Y%, et cetera. And we did learn from many other organizations that they do, in many cases, do a fixed, they effectively do a quote for each project. We're not suggesting we're going to go out for bid on every project by any stretch, but that Chris will look at the project and come in and either give us a fixed cost, say this is what my cost will be, obviously based on his assessment of the hours, or it's possible that he may say, this one is so iffy, I need to do it on an hourly basis. And at least will give us a basis to say, gee whiz, that's a whole lot of money that I guess we hadn't really thought of in addition to the actual project cost. Or we think for some smaller projects, it may actually be fair because it may not take all that much of his time. And he's done this with other organizations or other municipalities, and was receptive to these 2 substantive changes. So something we're going to try for at least this next year and see what we think of it. And Dave Biggert was all in favor of it as well. So with that, I'd like to move to suspend Ordinance 2021-47, setting forth the rate of compensation for engineering services for the village and declaring an emergency. And now move to suspend.
Second.
Allward,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes.
And now I'd like to move to approve 2021-47.
Second.
Allward,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes.
Okay, next is ordinance number 2021-48. Ann,
I'd like to introduce ordinance 2021-48, an ordinance to increase the compensation of certain village employees and declaring an emergency. Thank you for the background on that, Steve. I move to suspend.
Second.
Allward,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes, I move to adopt ordinance 2021-48.
Second.
Is that 4%? Did you?
Yes.
Okay.
Allward,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes.
okay, next is ordinance 2021-49. Ann,
I would like to introduce ordinance 2021-49, an ordinance to amend the annual appropriations ordinance number 2021-4 to increase certain appropriations and other expenditures of the village of Gates Mills, Ohio for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2021. And in order to continue to do business in a timely manner, I move to suspend.
Second.
Allward,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes, I move to adopt ordinance 2021-49.
Second.
Allward,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes.
thank you. Next is ordinance number 2021-50. Ann,
Ordinance 2021-50 is an ordinance providing appropriations for expenditures for the village of Gates Mills, Ohio for fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022, repealing certain ordinances and declaring an emergency. And for the same reasons, I move to suspend.
Second.
Allward,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes, I move to adopt ordinance 2021-50.
Second.
Allward,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes.
thank you. Next is business.
I'd like to make a comment before we move to business.
Okay.
The audience.
Go ahead.
Just briefly, and that is a process comment for anyone who might be looking in on this video. We just passed about 8 ordinances that relate to finances and budget. And it may look from the outside that this was all done very quickly without much discussion. But to underscore what Steve said at the beginning, there's insurance committee, there's a budget committee, the meetings that the treasurer and the finance administrator have with the department heads. We have a wage and, wage and benefit committee. Many council members are on those committees, and other council members who are not can attend. So by the time we get to this point to vote on this, anyone who's not on the council who's not familiar with this information, really hasn't been attending some of the meetings where this has been discussed. So again, just a process comment.
Thank you. Very important. Any other thoughts? Okay, business from the audience. Go ahead. Come on, Charlie, go up to the, oh, sorry. State your name and address as always.
Charlie Baker, Echo Glen. Chip, you addressed one of the issues that I came tonight.
Step up to the microphone, Charlie.
One of the issues that I was talking about, and that was the finances and the operation as to who was going to set the speed limits. And I think that is very critical. But there's also the other issue, and that is that the police department maintains the discretion when those tickets come back through for examination by the police department, that decision is made by the police department and not by the supplier of the product. The other thing is, I think.
Can I just pause on that? Because
Sure.
that's an excellent point, and I think as I read it, it's crystal clear. In fact, they make it explicitly clear. We have to approve it. They only process it, but we have to approve it. Greg, I believe that's So they don't have any role in that, but that's also going to be part of those business
Yeah.
rules that just make that
But
absolutely
in
clear.
theory, instead of going to 100-mile-an-hour limit to cut them off, you could just eliminate passing all the tickets through.
Well, that could be part of the business rules. So that's
So
turning out to be a pretty important
So
part
they're
of the
gonna,
agreement.
they're gonna want a hand in that, is the fact that you can't, don't have the ability to not pass through any tickets.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, well, that was my issue, and I'd like to see it move forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sure, come on up.
Hi, I'm Celeste McClung from 780 Chagrin River Road. If the cameras go up, some wise person had made a comment to me that if the cameras go up on Mayfield Road, will traffic be diverted to other roads around the village? And what impact might that have on the other roads? And what could be done for that? So I just wanted to ask if you can, in the process of vetting all of this, if you can also kind of look at that bigger picture with other roads and how they might be affected. There's some roads right around in here that could, if the traffic is if they're trying to avoid tickets, they might be using other roads in the village. So just a thought.
Okay, thank you. Chief, you'll be aware of that? Okay. You are looking at that. Okay. Anyone else? Jerry,
Excuse me. Hi, guys.
get up to the microphone.
Jerry Bohens, Karen Lane. In my former life, I did a lot of international traveling, and I picked up an old folk saying on these.
Get up to the microphone.
An old folk saying, an aphorism on these strips, and it said, basically it was, there are no new good ideas, or there are no good new ideas. The point is that unintended consequences are significant when you have a new idea. We have a good idea here. Manage the speed on Mayfield Road much more carefully and do it in a way that, because of geography, it's difficult for the police to do it in traditional manner. But the consequences of getting this wrong are pretty serious. If, as I understand it, there's somewhere between 10 and 20% of all the traffic on Mayfield, and that's basically a feeder road to Geauga County from Cuyahoga. So 10 to 20% of the people who drive that road are speeding. Is that right, roughly? 90%. Well, I mean, really speeding. If we ticketed 1% of 15,000 cars a day, which apparently is the low number using the road, that's 150 tickets a day. It's 50,000 tickets a year. If we charge $1 penalty, it's $50,000 a year. If we charge $10, it's $500,000. If we charged $100, it's $5 million, the majority of which would be a tax on people living in Geauga County. That's a pretty serious situation. I mean, I can see a war between communities putting in their own electronic high-tech speeding systems to compete, and maybe even retaliation from neighbors. And Celeste mentioned the idea of traffic diversion. I think it's a certainty down Old Mill Road. If you want to take another 7,500 cars a day through the center on Old Mill, you're going to get it. You're going to get it on Berkshire. You're going to get an overload on Wilson Mills, which is a problem at rush hours. I mean, you can't take too many more cars at rush hour on coming down the hill on Wilson Mills. So my point is that there are these issues. If this becomes popular, which it certainly will, if Gates Mills is taking in millions of dollars a year or $1 million a year or $5 million a year, other communities are going to say, hey, let's do it. So everybody will be doing it. And we know from experience that the state will immediately inject themselves into this whole project, take it over. And this idea that there's local rule in the Constitution, anyone who's lived in Gates Mills knows that's just silly. And we went through the state takeover of gas wells and gun laws in Cleveland, and it isn't going to work. So my point is, I also want to tell you one other story. In the late 1980s, John Schreiber, I think his wife's name was Becky, he's a doctor, researcher at university. Anyway, he had young kids and he organized a program to get the speed down on Battles Road. And it worked. I mean, Battles you don't go fast on Battles. But at the time, in the late 80s, it was like a drag. I mean, cars were doing 75 miles an hour coming out of the knee in the road. And so the police chief, because of working with the police department, we put in place a plan where the first thing they did was put up the portable radar guns. So you could say you're going too fast. At the same time, the police department literally handed out flyers at the stop sign at county line to everyone coming in at the Battles saying, we're going to start enforcing speed limits. Please slow down. After about 10 days of that, they started stopping people with warnings. This went on for like 6 weeks before they started ticketing speeders. So a strategy like that, a slow moving, habit changing strategy is actually imperative in this, if we're going to do Mayfield Road. And it has to be consistent, Chip, with the agreement with the camera guy, et cetera, et cetera. But it's, if Gates Mills is collecting essentially a tax on living in Geauga County because you're driving on Mayfield Road and people are going to drive the way you're going to drive within reason, we can manage it, but we can't completely control it. We were asking for a lot of trouble and a lot of negative publicity. Anyway, please give that some thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Allworder,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Zog,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner, Welsh,
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes.
Happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you. Same to you.
Find all the spots on that one.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry.
boy, it lasted
They're so warm.
I talked to our counsel for the tax thing, and all I have to do is appoint it. So we need to go over committee,
So is that it here?
I think that's, yep. I don't
and
think
then we need to look at committees going into next year. And I still have their yours to appoint because it's under treasurer. So I don't give a damn what that says. That's how we've always done it. And I got all the lists approved back to 96 or